The following is paid programming by Unipest Termite and Pest Control and does not represent the views or the opinions of KHTS, its owners, or any of its sponsors. We hope you enjoy the program. All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Pest Talk Radio, sponsored by Unipest Termite and Pest Control, where we help you out with all of your pest problems at home and at work, where we empower the DIYer to take on all of his own pest challenges or her pest challenges. We've had a couple of cool calls from the ladies in the last half hour. So anyway, we're going to dive into the next voicemail here.
Well,
we're going to answer
actually,
yes, what?
Yes, well, you told the viewers that you were going to tell them how they could help prevent.
You mean the listeners?
Because it's radio?
You're
right, listeners.
You're such a millennial who watches podcasts.
My mom always said I had a face for radio.
Yeah, that's right. You got more than a face for radio, bro. No, I'm just kidding. Just like that's savage. So anyway, yeah, you're right. Before we went on break, there was a customer who'd called in who thought they might have had bark beetles in a tree and some limbs had failed, so he cut them off. And I actually went out there and I visited him and found out upon the inspection that it was actually termites that was eating the dead tree material, specifically the southwestern drywood termite, which is common in Santa Clarita. And we got rid of the termites for him, but he's probably going to have to rip out the tree in 2 or 3 years as it completely fails and has a professional rip it out. I have some buddies over at Tip Top that oftentimes do tree removals, but unfortunately, no matter how you grind the stump, no matter how you get as much of that material out of there that you can, there's always what's called cellulose debris left in the soil, which means all of the dead tree roots, okay, all of the dead tree bark, things like that are left in the soil. And slowly as they rot, it becomes food for what? Subterranean termites. And, if you have subterranean termites in a tree root system 400 feet from your house, whatevs. But if you have subterranean termites in a tree root system 6 to 8 feet from your house, then you got a problem. And in Santa Clarita, I don't know if you've noticed, but a lot of these tract homes, are they really far apart or are they squished together? Yeah, they're squished together. Yeah. Most people's trees are probably only about 6 to 8 feet from some part of their structure, and that structure is predominantly built with wood and stucco. So in order to keep the wood from getting infested by these subterranean termites, sometimes you can do a preventive terminal treatment, actually in the root system. And I got a cool system for you. You want to hear it, bro?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Let's hear it.
Okay, so you go and you just dig a perfect cross pattern in that 4-inch trench. And you know how you always have to put down those 4 gallons every 10 feet?
Yep.
I just dig 2 10-foot sections that go the length of where the roots are. And then that way there's never an area, because there's a cross, a 90-degree cross. There's never an area where the termites can go straight in any direction where they won't come across that very eco-friendly and pet-friendly soil termidor treatment. And there's other products you can use as well, like Navigator and Taurus have come up with generic versions of Termidor as well. But it's the number one selling termiticide in North America, is actually the one that helps get rid of subterranean termites, a problem that we really don't have that much in Santa Clarita. There are subterranean termites, and I'd say probably maybe 10 to 25% of the calls we get in are for subterranean termites, but the biggie here in the SCV are drywood termites.
So you're talking about how to help prevent termites, but how would you distinguish if you have termites and then how would you have drywood?
Well, with the subterranean termites, you got those mud tubes that I was showing you in training, and those will pop up anywhere. Also, when you find the damage, it's littered with just these piles of dirt that come down, and it's the dirt from underneath the house. It's kind of funny. It is actually the same color as the dirt underneath the house, underneath the slab foundation. It's pretty wild. They can get through cracks as thin as a credit card, but yeah, it's pretty gnarly. So it's something worth preventing because, for a couple $100 you can do a preventive treatment for subterranean termites. However, if you get subterranean termites, it's a couple $1,000s oftentimes to do the treatment. And so you want to kind of avoid that at all costs. It's one of the few treatments that you can indeed do yourself. Some of these soil termiticides are legally purchasable online. And if you're willing to actually get out and dig that trench and spend 2 or 3 hours on a Saturday morning, making your wife think that you're a big fat stud and remembering where all those muscles were that you forgot since college, you know what I'm saying? If you want to go out there and do it yourself and get sunburned in the process, then by all means, dig that trench. I'll show you what product to purchase and you will be in like Flynn, my man. So that was, I veered verbose, forgive me. But let's move on to the rest of the mailbag here. We got, it looks like some, Gophers in Castaic. Let's see what this person has to say. Caller number 3.
Hi, my name is Heather, and I am calling because we have a huge problem here at my house. We live out in Castaic, and we have a couple acres, and we have gophers everywhere. They're literally on every hillside. There's probably families living out here, but I'm a little bit concerned because it seems like it's ruining the integrity of my hillsides, and so I'm wondering if I could have somebody come out as soon as possible to take a look at it. I don't know how you take care of them, but I just need to be rid of them. Anyways, if you could call me back as soon.
All right. So we've got Heather in Castaic. You know, Jordan, you take this one, my man.
Yeah.
Those are your stomping grounds. You're a Castaic kid, right?
I am. Yeah.
All right. Rock on. So what is young Heather going to do for the Gophers and Hillside? She says she's worried about the integrity of the hill. That sounds pretty intense, my man.
Yeah. It definitely sounds like there's a ton in there, and like my first question would be like, how much vegetation is there? Because the gophers, they love to feed off of the roots of vegetation. And the weeds out there.
That's true. So. I mean, a lot of people forget this, but gophers are herbivores. And it's really interesting because sometimes people will mistake moles, voles, and gophers. Gophers are herbivores. They're going after the roots. Unfortunately, you get punished for having good landscape here in Santa Clarita.
Yes, you do.
Because Gavin Newsom outlawed a lot of the rodenticides. The state assembly outlawed a lot of other rodenticides. And gophers that traditionally have not been a problem in Santa Clarita are spouting up everywhere over the past 5 to 6 years. And people how many times have you guys heard, I've lived here for 25 years and I've never had X rodent. You know what I'm saying? But it's always the same story when you don't use these products like the Department of Ag used to on the slopes and the hillsides, like some of the cities and the municipalities used to, like some of the HOAs used to. What was done publicly with tax dollars all of a sudden has to be done privately with private pest control, and rodent control, especially gopher control, is one of those. But oftentimes people don't realize that there's gophers in Santa Clarita, so they think it's moles, and moles are actually carnivorous. They feed off of all the worms and the grubs in the soil, and they leave the roots alone. That's why their tunnels are always much more shallow and predominant in the soil, and you can see them from farther away. But the gophers, they make those gnarly mounds, and they can move 2 tons of, one gopher can move a 1/2 ton of earth per year.
Wow. That's a ton of damage.
Isn't that gnarly? So anyway, I'm sorry I interrupted you. You said you wanted to see what kind of vegetation they had. Continue. Tell us what else you would want to know.
Yeah. So obviously, that would be the first thing. Next thing I would want to see, I get this a lot lately, and a lot of people, like you were saying earlier, a lot of people confuse what the activity looks like, because you just mentioned dirt mounds. I get a lot of customers actually saying, "Oh, I'm seeing like holes in my lawn," and it's like, okay, well, are you seeing mounds? And they're like, no, they're just holes. It's like, well, then you got to consider, is it meadow voles? What are your thoughts on that, Cardin?
I just resort to pictures at that point. You know what I'm saying? I'll be honest. One of the best things that ever happened to pest control was the proliferation of the smartphone. And by the way, please, if you're within the sound of my voice, okay, get an iPhone if the rest of your family is on iPhones. You know what I'm saying? Don't be that one guy that ruins the family iMessage chat because he wanted to
green
save.
Guy. Everyone knows the green guy.
Yeah, the green guy. Because look, if the rest of your family has Androids, that's fine. And I'm not some stan for not Steve Jobs anymore, but Tim Cook. All right. But I do have to say, when you're the one dude in like the 13-person family chat, like it's kind of funny. You know how I lived in South America for 2 years. I lived in Argentina. I served as a volunteer service missionary down there. And there's 2 teams, Boca and River, that is this massive rivalry. I mean, it's worse than the Giants and the Dodgers. Okay. Ooh. And when you show up, you got to pick a team. And if you're in the wrong neighborhood with the wrong shirt, you might get roughed up. Like, I mean, it is bad down there. Right. But, iPhone versus Android, you know what I'm saying? Like in that rivalry, I think families just have to choose at this point. You know what I'm saying? Do we want to have the fuzzy videos that nobody can see, or do we want the ones that actually look good so everybody laughs together? You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, we're not sponsored by Apple, and I just gave them way too big of a commercial than they deserve because their products are expensive. But anyway, let's keep going. I would resort to pictures to see what kind of difference it is, because here's the other thing. Not all gopher mounds are mounds. Like, I was just out with Matt today showing him in a vineyard. Have you guys seen the vineyards popping up all over Stevenson Ranch?
Yeah, they're crazy. Like, they go up the hill, like they stack on each other almost.
Yeah,
trees.
Like, a lot of people are starting to get into the vineyard game, and it's kind of crazy because I have one customer that lived right off of Poe Parkway in Stevenson Ranch that only had the mandatory 5 feet on the side of your house you have to have before there's the mandatory 5 feet on the other side of the wall for the other house. So the homes are 10 feet across. Like, if you can long jump 10 feet at Hart High School, you can make it from like one roof to another in Stevenson Ranch half the time. You know what I'm saying? So she had a very small side yard, but it was a very long house. I think it was about 75 to 85 feet long. She had 44 grapevines that wrapped around that side yard to the backyard. And she said she harvested an average of 22 to 30 bottles of wine a year from her backyard vineyard. Yeah. So I went with one of our techs, Matt, that I'm training, and he was asking me, he's like, well, dude, are these gopher mound holes? And have you ever seen those really small gopher holes that don't have a mound around them, but they're kind of backstuffed? Have you seen those, Jordan?
They kind of look like it's almost like loose dirt inside of a hole. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, exactly. It looks kind of like loose dirt into a hole, right? Well, that's actually a snake escape for the gophers. Have you ever heard of that? I just learned about this 2 years ago. It's crazy.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, gophers are super intriguing. As we talked about earlier, they can move a 0.5 ton to 2 tons of earth per year. I mean, I've seen these things condemn overpasses.
I mean,
Okay.
do you think we could hire him for the subterranean termite jobs?
Yeah,
Can
for
dig
real.
out the dirt for us.
Go underneath there and eat all the
That'd
dirt.
be
you know?
great.
Yeah, I mean, eat all the subterranean termites. Well, so gophers are a force to be reckoned with, right? But they're extremely intelligent. The first tunnel that they dig is actually a tunnel that goes down and sideways so that water, in case there's a flood or like, you know, you stick your hose down the hole or whatever, it doesn't flood them out of their tunnel system and it drains elsewhere. And then from that tunnel, they actually dig all their other tunnels downwards so that the gravity pulls the water downward, except for one, which is where they store their food, and another one where they store their children and their babies. In fact, when there's 18 inches of flood water above them, the pressure system is preserved in their tunnel system, so much so that they're bone dry in that one tunnel that they dug upwards. Why? Because the air pressure mitigates the water pressure and makes it so that they actually stay dry, even though flood waters are covering them, right? So the first tunnel they dig is that. And then the second tunnel is an escape tunnel. And I found out that they don't do the big, huge mound that they're known for. They're kind of like shrimp that swim backwards. They kind of push the dirt upwards and they move their body backwards, right? If you've ever seen it.
Yep.
Well, they don't do it that way. They actually just leave a little bit of loose dirt in there because they don't want to give away their presence too much and make a big fat scene. But they make that little dirt cap so that in case a snake goes into their tunnel and they sense the snake and the snake is coming after them, they can run through that tunnel and just kind of like burst out of that little dirt cap and run away on the top of the ground in an emergency situation.
Right.
Isn't that kind of nuts?
Yeah. It makes sense though, because, you know, I get a lot of customers, you know, that are, you know, previously do-it-yourselfers that try to flood the tunnels, and then, that's when
They see it on Caddyshack and they think they can just stick the hose down and it'll drain them out.
Right.
This doesn't work.
No.
Yeah. So what's the funniest DIY fix you've seen people try and do for gophers? Have you seen the stick of gum yet?
No, what's that?
Dude, I have seen everything. I have seen them try and shove. We've all seen the dryer sheets.
Oh yeah.
Like that's just an all rodent lore internet fix that never works.
You see the fake sonar things, you just stick them in the ground and it keeps gophers out of
Oh
the
my
yard.
gosh.
Oh yeah.
We should. Okay. if there is somebody within our voice that has $1 million and wants to just make a cynical $5 million off of it, then just start one of those stupid gopher buzzer companies, because all you need is a plastic tube that runs off of D batteries, vibrates, and then has a solar panel on top. And every bad gopher job I go to has those. In fact, you know what's so funny about those things is in the old days. See, the reason why the gopher buzzers don't really work is because humans have never figured out how to truly randomize a sound. We haven't figured out how to make something seem truly random, especially cheap electronics. Okay. And so what happens is sooner or later, the gophers actually get used to the fact that, oh, the ground here just buzzes on occasion. And it's predictable and it's not harmful. So, you know, those gopher buzzers, sometimes they'll work for a week or two, but sooner or later, the gophers just get used to them. Okay. And in the old days, what was really funny was they thought they'd found the frequency that caused distress in gophers. So they built buzzers that would release the distress signal. See, you guys are young bucks, but I remember the 90s. Okay, and pest control in the early 2000s was a little bit different, all right? There was this kind of gopher buzzer where they had actually thought they could mimic the distress signal of gophers, but as the battery slowly died, the signal that it emitted slowly dropped in frequency into what signal from the gophers? The mating signal. and so you had these people trying to get rid of their gophers, you know, and it worked for like 2 or 3 weeks. But by week 5 or 6, there's like 15 mounds.
Man, just having a gopher orgy in there.
Dude. And people are thinking it's like spring break for the gophers. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, that one was pretty funny.
Wow.
So anyway, we're totally veering verbose. We got to come back around here. We only got 5 minutes left, and we're skipping half of these voicemails in the mailbag. I feel sorry for these people. But how would you said, what would you do? You'd want to know what the activity was more like. And then you asked me what I would do. And I said, I would look for pictures. Let's just say you found out it was regular common gophers. How would you go out there as a professional? And what would you recommend to a DIYer that wanted to try and do it themselves? Jordan, go.
So another thing that I was going to mention as well is that I noticed in the call that she was saying that there are families of gophers. Well, one thing to point out is that gophers are relatively solitary creatures. Like they kind of like to keep themselves. If you think introverted to the extreme. So, you know, that's why whenever I'm looking for gopher activity, I always look in sections. Like you can usually tell, you know, if there's, unless it's like severe activity, you can tell what's one gopher because the dirt mounds and, you know, these so-called escape holes that you mentioned, they'll all kind of be clustered into one section, and then, you know, maybe 5 feet over there'll be another, and then that's separate activity. So
you do notice almost like starry constellations that the mounds kind of show up in similar areas. And I've deduced this. I haven't had any kind of, you know, scientific study that I've performed where I've, you know, overpaid UC Riverside $10,000 to tell me something obvious. You know what I'm saying? Did I say that's what scientific surveys were? But anyway, I don't have a scientific study that I can reference directly that proves this, but my personal experience has taught me that there's a lot of clay in the soil in Santa Clarita.
Oh yeah.
And the clay in the soil makes it so that these tunnels last forever. Gopher tunnels in other types of soil, they're durable because they're made well by craftsmen that have been doing it for 2,000 years. Okay. But like these tunnels, they last forever. If it weren't for the seismic activity in California, the amount of clay that we have in the soil in Santa Clarita would make us these tunnels lasted forever. And where they start going bad and branching off is where the repeat digging happens. And these gophers oftentimes reinfest each other's holes. Reinfestation is a huge problem in the gopher world. And that's why I've noticed that sometimes these poor people, especially the ones that are trying to do a good job watering their lawn and trying to do a good job feeding their plants so they get robust root systems and can survive the droughts and so on and so forth. People that have nice bubblers and drip systems on their shrubbery and stuff, it's almost like they get punished for doing a good job with their landscaping because the roots get so robust and the gophers come to them. You know what my record is for gophers in one yard that was 18 feet by 6 feet? It was in Castaic. Actually, this lady called in from Castaic.
Right.
It was off of Elkwood Drive. Okay.
Okay.
It was like
Sounds familiar.
yeah, it's kind of by that roundabout on Hasley Canyon. 16 gophers in 3 weeks from 1 yard.
Wow.
16 gophers. Yeah, it was gnarly.
Yeah.
Beyond compare. So anyway, Heather from Castaic. First off, I think your hillside's going to be fine. The rains are causing more erosion to these gophers are, especially if you're staying on top of it. However, if it were a concern and you want a professional to look at it, you can always call us at 661-BUG-7575. Unipest is a gopher trapping and a gopher catching and a gopher treating company. We'd love to help you out. There's all kinds of eco and pet friendly options for you. If you want to DIY it, you can actually check out unipest.com. We've got a really cool series on how to set your own gopher traps. There's several traps out there. We prefer the Gophernator because we think it's kind of the safest for the animals and the safest for your own fingers in case you screw up while you're trying to figure it out in the first place. But yeah, there's all kinds of options to help you out. Check out our website. If you get tired of trying to do it yourself, you can always call us at bug7575 and we will gladly help you out. But yeah, gophers in Castaic, they're a big thing. Anyway, unfortunately, we're going to have to go now here. We're reaching the top of the hour. We missed the mosquito eaters. It looks like we'll have to cover that next week, and the tarantula wasps. But there's never enough time to talk about all the pest problems. But if you guys got any questions, check us out on unipest.com. Watch more of this show on hometownstation.com. You've been listening to Pest Talk Radio. I'm your host, Cardinellis, joined with Jordan Maurer and Hunter Smith right here in the studio. This is FM 98.1 and AM 1220 KHTS. We will see you guys next week on the next edition of Pest Talk Radio.